So, a usual start, and hopefully from that a sense of the familiarity of the routine. Just rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Your arm. And on the other side. Belly. And your legs. Sitting back, just allowing yourself to sink back into the chair. Just aware of your body's response, that sort of sense of settling, quietening. And if you pay attention to that, you'll notice certain responses in your body, you know, a bit of relaxation here, a sense of sinking down into the chair, maybe a change in your breathing, whatever. And your awareness of all of those processes actually feeds into this quietening, not just of your body, but of your attention, of your mind. Thoughts just settle in. And again, for people familiar with this, there's the reference points, the memories from previous times, whatever sort of memories, whatever images arise for you. Just a reminder, really, that it's possible to have that sense of being a little bit quieter, greater sense of space in your mind and your body, movement. And then change in position. If you can, have up to a third of your weight in your feet. So if you can sit forward in the chair, that can help with that. But as always, not if it's going to hurt your back. So if you find that after a while doing this, or even straight away doing this, you're getting this dull ache in your back, or even something a bit sharper, sit back. And most chairs, the back of the chair will slant back. So if you sit back in this posture, like this, because you get the weight in your feet, you're slightly angled forwards. And when you go back, it'll be the lower part of your back that gets the support of the chair. And that's usually sufficient. If it's not, if you find yourself straining in the upper part of the body, and sit right back for a little while, just to give the muscles a chance to recover. And again, that same feeling of settling that you had in the reclining position, particularly in the upper part of your body, so your rib cage dropping down and so on, but also aware of the support, the strength in the feet and legs and in your back. Again, breathing coming nice and smoothly if at all possible. Just begin to become aware of whatever other sensations there are within your body. And then with all that as part of the background, just beginning to turn your head nice and smoothly. And then your shoulders. And going forwards. Hands to your sides. And then winding around. And back the other way. Rest your hands and easing forwards and pushing back. Notice that little bit of a soft stretch in the lower part of your back that you get when you go forwards. Hips dropping back into the chair. And when you come back to the upright position, clearly there's a significant push from your legs, but also a little bit of a pull from your hips and from that extension in your back. And turning slightly, so you go more towards one leg than the other. Maybe just distinguishing between what we would refer to as the full leg, the one with the most weight, and the empty leg. And then turn the other way. And then turn, so you bring yourself across, you feel the weight in the other leg, back into the hip behind it, turning again, feel the weight in the opposite hip, and then forwards to the original foot. Just rolling around in the center of your body, your hips, your pelvis. and then go back in the other direction. Come back to the center, pull up one knee, step out, heel toe, and in. Heel toe, and in. One more time. And then on the other side. Okay, straighten up. Hands down to your sides. So keeping all those elements sort of working for you, just bringing your arms carefully and gently into the movement. And your weight's still moving. Here, your weight's back in your hips mostly. Then we feel it flowing forwards through our legs into our feet, back into our hips. And then change into fisherman castanet. So hands facing backwards, shoulders going back, drawing your arms back, and then reversing that. So body tilts forwards, pulling the arms after. And just that little bit of an overlap as the movement comes to an end. Here, I'm already moving backwards a little bit. And here, now I'm starting to go forwards. So the backward movement is initiated really from a push down through the feet, and the forward movement will push down through hips. You might want to emphasize that little push down every now and then, just to remind yourself of it. But like many other things, it just becomes a part of the whole. But the thing about having different elements that are parts of a whole thing is that if they disappear, you no longer have the whole thing. So it's good to focus on them sometimes and just to work out how they are actually working for you within the boundaries of the exercise. The problem with focusing on one particular aspect is almost inevitably what it does is overemphasize it sooner or later. But if we focus on other elements, then overall there's a balancing effect. And then rolling the ball in. So you could be quite systematic about that. You could be sort of, oh yeah, Monday I'm going to practice this, Tuesday I'm going to practice this, and so on and so forth. I tend to have almost a list of things, a kind of bucket list, as they say, of things that I want to be exploring, developing. But on any particular occasion when I go out to practice, really the first question is, what do I kind of need today? Am I tired? Am I lively? Do I feel I want to sort of do a particular exercise, or work with a particular part of the body or a particular aspect of the art. Certain things I find are pretty much constant, the quietening, the postures, and so on and so forth. But others can vary. And then sitting back, visually spreads its wings. Just feel that gentle opening and closing in chest and upper back. And pushing a wave. And then with your hands twisted. Remember with this one, your elbows don't go back behind your hips. So the actual movement of your arm is even less than it is in the previous exercises on a forward and backward basis. But what there is a big movement in this rotation of the arm here as you come back. But you don't want this to happen with your elbow going behind, because once your elbow's behind the shoulder, you've lost the sort of structural integrity of the movement. So a lot of the impulse that might bring your hand back there is absorbed into the spiraling movement. And turn your hands out. One more time. Pushing the table. So turning in the center of your body. And it's worth just paying a bit of attention to what's happening at the back. So where your spine meets the pelvis, when the front of your body turns to your left, that part of your body is turning to your right. When the hips go back, that's that which sends the shoulders forward. You should feel as though somebody's sitting behind you, pulling you back into the chair. And sort of, they got a hold of the top of your trousers at that point where the spine meets the pelvis. It's like they've grabbed hold and they're pulling you around from side to side and pulling you back, and so on and so forth. So don't get stuck on this being all about your arms or the front of your body. Try and maintain and cultivate this vision of the body, this view of the body that is far more holistic. You have a back as well as a front. You have sides as well as front and back. And we want the movement to come from, or through, shall we say, a variety of paths, not just in the arms. Good. Now, one more time. Bring your hands in, rotate them so they're palm up, pushing up and pressing down. But expanding, contracting, nice steady, quite strong rhythm, but quite smooth and gentle. A sort of softness about it, like the waves on the beach. And then wild goose. Easing forwards, hands crossing in front of your knees, just letting your fingertips continue to move around the circle that comes out of the structure of your arm and your shoulder. Don't rush. Try and just make that circle as smooth as you can by just trying to relax your arms and your hands as much as possible. One more time. And then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Let your hands come down, feel the weight of both arms hanging from your shoulder, and then just one arm pushing up. Use your hips and your legs again to push your hand up. And same thing on the other side. Reaching up. So you're going to pluck an apple off a tree. Wind around, pull down. One more time. And then both hands together. Body again expanding and contracting. This time, turning in your hips and your waist, and the effect on the arms is to send them pushing out at a bit of an angle. Same thing in the other direction, and then facing the front, pushing out to the side. Start again, pushing up. We've got the 4 directions, upwards, sideways, and facing 2 different ways, and just generally movement through the body. Now, extend one foot, scoop in the sea, and looking at the sky. And then piston your hands and grasping the tiger's ears. Not struggling to bring your arms around. If you can, let them swing out and up so they're just level with your own ears. One more time. Crossing over. And then change into grasping the tiger's ears. Feeling the sternum pull back slightly as your hands come over. Look between your hands. Try not to look down at your knees. Okay, now bring your feet back. Transferring your weight forwards and backwards. So filling and emptying into your legs and then back into hips and lower back. Now, come back, turn slightly to your left, and feel how that puts your weight more in your left hip, and then diagonally forwards to your right foot, back into the left. Turn towards your right, feel your weight being drawn across by that. And repeat that on the other side, forwards to the opposite leg. And back. And then moving across like an X with a line underneath it. Yeah, this time come into your left hip. Hold the ball, left hand on top, right hand underneath. Move across into your right foot. Get the feeling of pushing into something with your shoulder, and then just turning, bringing your right hand out, more or less in line with your leg. Coming back, hold the ball, and move across. Try not to get distracted by thoughts of, oh, I'm not sure of the next movement or something like that. Here, opening in the chest, coming back, and across. Heart in the wild horse's mane. And we can develop this a little. So going forwards into your right leg, your left hand's out in front. So your right hand's out in front, your left hand's down in front of the hip. But this time, just settle into that position and let your left hand come through as though it was trying to reach your elbow or your forearm. Turn the palm of your hand back. Now, imagine your fingers are in water. You come up, pulling your fingers out, go back into your left hip, and just settle down again. As you settle down, turn your hands palm in, you've got a ball between your hands, and you move forwards into the right leg again. This time when you come back, both hands come over the top of the circle, but your left hand drops underneath to hold the ball, and you come across into your right hip, forwards into your left leg. Letting the right hand come around towards the forearm or the elbow here. Palm turned back, drawing out, so you're pulling your fingers out of mud. Settle into the posture and then push forward. This is a movement called the white apophis fruit. Come back, now it's going to be your right hand that drops down and push through. And just let your hand rest. White apophis fruit. So a slightly more complex set. We will do it again, obviously, first time for most of you doing this exercise. So it's a bit confusing, but it makes a nice little flowing sequence. A little bit more complicated than some of the other exercises that we do. So quite a lot going on in the body when we do this, but also not too many. And because it's repeated over and over again, it's a chance of becoming very familiar with them. So the intricacy of the exercise is quite appealing and is a good way of, again, training your attention, training your awareness. But sometimes in some of the long sequences, the forms of Tai Chi, it can be a real battle to just remember the movements. And if you're constantly battling to remember the movements, it's quite hard to sink beneath the surface of them. So white tape offers fruit is a nice compromise. We will come back to it, and I will do a little recording of the seated version of it. But for now, just rubbing your hands together. And then tapping over your face again. Over your head and neck. Shoulder. The other side. Part of the chest. Belly. And then finally your legs. And then pushing your knee up and down, pumping the leg. And going around. And then on the other side. And around. Okay, and then standing. As always, do use the chair for support. I'm going to move mine out the way, so I'll keep bumping into it. But put a wall there, so if I feel I want to sort of hold on to something, I can still do that. So feet parallel. Now try and think about this idea of the feet being parallel. They're directly below your hips. So when I stand like this, toes, knees, hips, shoulders, the whole of the front of the body are all facing the same direction. Now I can have the feet a little bit turned out, but it is only a little bit here. It's okay. In order to keep my knees, I'm going to come a bit closer. So what I want is I'd show you the front knee. I want my knee to point in the same direction as my toes. If my toes are slightly turned out, that means my knee will be slightly turned out. If my foot's a long way turned out, now I'm being pulled in that direction, but I'm trying to look in the opposite direction. So as you do this more and more and more, you lose some of that alignment. And if your feet are sticking out at quite a wide angle, you really do need the knees to do that, not that, because that can start to strain, that will strain the inside of your knees. Now, the problem with that is that when we do that, when the toes turn out, we tighten up across the lower back here. So we tighten up in one of the areas that we're working hard to try and release in. So overall, what you want to be able to do, this is a very common way of standing. It's a very natural way of standing for me. My feet have always been inclined to turn out. Lots of people's are. It's not wrong because it's how we are. But you can change that. And I spent years slowly sort of like bringing feet in like that. And what I still find is if I'm not paying attention, I could be standing here doing an exercise, and without me even realizing it, one foot would turn out or something like that. So you have to pay attention. I do quite often have my feet very slightly turned out, but it is only very slightly. So you want to think about that. Overall, we want the body to be aligned. So if you're looking in one direction, then or facing a particular, facing the wall or moving in a particular direction or something, your whole body's moving that way. If not, it would be like, if you drive a car, the whole car's facing one way, apart from one wheel, which decides to go the other way. Well, we know what's going to happen if that happens. So part of the production or the cultivation of a posture that allows for this freer movement, both within and the body and through the space around us, is that development. Excuse me. Is that development of a good aligned posture. So we're aligning ourselves with the pull of gravity as the principal force that works through our body. But we're doing so in such a way that also means that when we start to move, then the power, the force of the movement is also conducive, is also something that we're in line with. So sinking your hips back, push up. Now with the first set of exercises here, clearly, we're in line with the pull of gravity and the movement is vertical. So you're moving up and down, in a sense, following that line of gravity. You use gravity in the same way that you might use a plumb line to hang wallpaper or ruler to draw a straight line. So it's a useful reference point. And then the wild goose, stand inversion. Allowing free passage of movement through your body encourages the flow of your energy and the harmonization of that energy. No sort of barriers, nothing to create whirlpools or blockages, everything working with everything else rather than against it. And then heart in the clouds. One more time. Good, and shake it. Now, when we change to this stance, we've still got to align ourselves with the pull of gravity. But in moving forwards and backwards, we also want to make sure that we're not moving against our body. So if there is anything out of line, sooner or later, that's going to constitute a barrier. So when I go forwards, I go to about 60% of my weight forwards. And if you look at my back leg, here. If I try and go forwards anymore, I overextend this knee, but also I'm now pulling on this back leg. That means there's a relationship between how much weight I can get in the front foot and what's happening in the back leg, because the back leg is slightly, the back foot is slightly turned out, remember. Now that can be a nuisance, although, you know, frankly, if you feel as though you want more forwards and backwards movement, what you should be doing is taking a bigger stance, not compensating by doing the movement badly. So you end up working the legs more. So the alignments that we take don't have to be as rigid in, say, I don't know, a piece of machinery or something like that. We're more flexible than that, but we still have boundaries of the movement. So 60% of your weight in the front foot, maybe 70 in your back foot. But now we get to here, and we know there's a relationship between how much weight is there and what's happening in the back foot. But if we allow the back heel to come up like this, then what we get is a slight extra shift, but more of the weight coming in. And what we want to be able to do is to allow that weight to drop downwards. So we don't want it to push us forwards, but it allows more weight to drop down. And likewise, when we go back, 70% as I raise the toes can become 80% or whatever. And of course, now we slightly turn the front foot out a little bit more. And that's largely to allow that opening of the hip joint, which again, most people find useful, just to create a little bit more space for the dropping down. But also, by doing this from the other side, and I'll exaggerate, if I turn that foot out a long way, then actually I'm now beginning to turn in that direction. And that also helps to raise the foot. So it's not that big. It's a smaller movement than that, but there is still this tendency for this to happen. So actually opening the foot does actually mean that you're able to get some assistance in moving the foot. So rather than with the original exercise, fixed step exercise, facing directly ahead, but now if you look at my hands, they're kind of moving around just a little bit. This is a little bit exaggerated, by the way. It's a subtle thing. So just doing this would, for instance, initiate the movement of a hand or something like that. Plus, of course, we let the weight sink in, and then we can step in. So just be aware of the mechanics of the movement and how, again, those mechanics work together, not against each other. As soon as you change one thing in a complex machine like our own bodies, then lots of things will start to change. And we need to make sure that each change is conducive with the rest of the body, not something that's going to, it's not a buckled wheel on a bicycle or something like that. And then on the other side, the same thing here. So if we want to maintain a particular alignment, there are restrictions on how much we can do in that particular alignment. Here I want to remain fixed step. I want the focus of my attention to be primarily on the process of the weight changing, as we've looked at many times. And because of that, there are certain things that at this point I can't really properly do. But once I start to change that, I raise my toes, I raise my heel, then things can start to change. This is not really necessarily taking into account a great deal of actual rotation in the center of the body as yet. We will get to that. And then stepping in, you can now just begin to feel that rotation. Obviously, there is a possibility for independent movement between what we think of as upper and lower body. We're again more flexible than most machines. We're not rigid. So if I'm here on the front foot, I actually still have a reasonable range of soft movement in my hips and my waist. But primarily this exercise at this point isn't really about that. But now we can step forward. We've got just that little bit of a movement here. And that can initiate this circular sweeping movement of the foot. And then going back. Ultimately, the guide to how far you're doing this is going to be your own awareness of your body, that ability to keep a distinction between something like a muscle that's working hard, perhaps, and one that's actually under strain. There are different qualities there. So now, fisherman cast a net, as I said before, everything is about forwards and backwards at this point. You're facing forwards, your back is facing back, if you like, think of it like that. You're moving front to back, back to front, and your arms are swinging in the same way. Very straightforward. But when we change to wind blows the willows, we come back and we discover we do have a certain amount of choice in movement. We can come forward, we can turn a little way. I can turn a bit. I don't need to turn a long way anyway. So we have that articulation in the center of the body, which begins to give us the variety of movements in our arms. Wind blows the willows. Okay, and then on the other side, and we didn't do it today, but if we'd wanted to step, we could have turned a little bit further to help the step in, and so on and so forth. So certain movements like this one are really good for a very simple way to establish alignment with the forces working through our body, gravity, the push up, the movement forwards and backwards, all unrestricted. We become familiar with that, and then we start to add in, I suppose we're adding complications in a way to play with those ideas. So now sink back and turn. When you do this, feel what's happening on the inside of your thighs, because what we don't want to happen is when I turn that knee to twist, I have to be prepared to maintain the position and alignment of my knee. I don't want this, the knee's got to move out, and that involves the muscles on either side of the thigh, the adductor and abductor muscles, not locking hard, but just working a little bit to maintain the position. I feel it particularly on the inside of the thigh with this exercise for some reason. Lovely. And then bring the feet parallel. Good. So, many times. So go back to your chair. Again, give yourself a few moments to settle in so that you can feel what forces are acting on your body. Another factor when we're seated, of course, is the chair itself. What shape is the chair? There's a wide variety. Some chairs seem to lean back more and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's quite interesting to try this posture in a different chair. I get to do that all the time, of course, because I go to different places to teach. So the chairs are different from one hall to another. I kind of noticed that some designs of chairs are very useful, more useful than others. But each time I sit down, I have to get a sense of how it's going to go from this point. So just let your hands drop down. Now push out, elbows soft, body expanding, and then contracting, drawing in, embracing tiger, returning to the mountain. And this too benefits from that awareness of how different forces are acting on our body. And in fact, those forces become very useful rather than seeing them as something antagonistic that we have to align with. Just think that actually they're very useful to us when we do align with them. And for instance, with this one, the arms coming up, here you're okay, but they gradually get heavier and it's going to become a bit of a struggle at this point. We don't want to struggle. So you start to draw in. You let your elbows drop down, you feel your hips dropping down, and everything comes back to that quiet starting point. So if you're out here and you feel a bit agitated, a bit uncentered, then actually the means to find that center again, the means to quieten down, the means to find that calmness is actually there in your body, with the pull of gravity working through it, because that draws you down. It draws your body down. And if you're aware of what's happening within your body, it will also draw your attention down. So you don't have to struggle for the quiet space, but rather just follow the pathway that will inevitably take you there. And we learn in Tai Chi to refer back to this constantly. I see it a great deal in Tai Chi events, especially when there's something difficult going on for some reason or another. You look at the faces of the experienced people and you can read the faces. You can see there's a little bit of kind of introversion there, a little bit of how do I find my center? I need to stay calm here so I can absorb whatever's going on properly. Otherwise, I've wasted my money or something like that. You know, but remember that movement, find out how that works, so on and so forth. And we would do all of that from that point of stillness. And we use gravity to help us to find it. And then resting. And open your eyes. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. So a couple of days ago, I was saying to people, go out and enjoy the sunshine, but I think I'll...